How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Ethan Bridge. I'm host of the Social Media Marketing School podcast and the guy behind the Instagram page at The Marketing Ethan. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit of a shorter one, but it's something that I did want to talk about because it's a mistake that I see a lot of people making on Instagram, and it's something that you just need to take more consideration of. And it's to do with your Instagram carousels. Carousels are something that I have created since the beginning of my page, and I've made a lot of mistakes with them, and I've seen a lot of success from them. Over time, mine have dramatically improved, and it primarily, in my opinion, comes down to the storytelling throughout that carousel and the structure of the way you are presenting each slide. And it's that specifically that I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. I'm going to be talking about 4 different structures that you can use in your carousels to see a greater performance and have a better sense of storytelling. Because when I consume a lot of carousels from other creators on Instagram, in some cases they are just somewhat thrown together for the sake of being a carousel. Not every post you create needs to be a carousel. Sometimes what a lot of people say can be condensed into a single image via an infographic, or they can have the premise of the point on a single image and present what they've put in their carousel within the caption. There are lots of different ways you can create content. It doesn't always have to be a carousel because it's trendy. Now, I may sound like a bit of a hypocrite there because I put a lot of my content in carousels, but I ensure that the way I put them in carousels fits the structure of how I want it to, so that the storytelling told throughout keeps people engaged and paying attention to what I'm actually saying. So without any further ado, let's just dive into a few of the different carousel structures you could use for your carousels so that you do in fact have a better sense of storytelling, so that you will retain that attention throughout. So structure number 1 is a formula known by many, and it's called AIDA, so AIDA, and these stand for 4 different things: attention, interest, desire, and action. So 4 different steps, and you want to be using each of those pillars throughout, but on different slides of your carousel. So attention, pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be slide number 1. That is your headline. That is what's going to grab the attention of the people viewing it, so that they then proceed to go to that next slide of your carousel. But then it's in the next few, 3, maybe 4 slides that you have those interest points. You are grabbing people's attention. You are keeping it so that you are building up towards those desire points where you actually give them the value. You may be asking them questions, raising struggles, making a point to which they can relate to, so that they then really want to find out the solution to the problem that you have presented. So you're building that interest with those first 4 slides. So the first slide, you had your attention. Slides 2, 3, 4, 5, and sometimes maybe even 6, you are building that interest. And then in the final slides, so 7, 8, and 9, that is when you have those desire slides. You deliver on that promise you made within the first few slides, where you were building that interest and getting them hooked. You are really now just hitting home and providing all of that value that they've been looking forward to. And then the final slide, slide number 10, because you get 10 slides for your carousel, is your action. You've grabbed that attention, you've retained that attention, and then you've given that attention some value. So you've now got them fully consumed in your piece of content and fully consumed with you. So now you don't want to just lose that attention. You want them to take action. And that's why the A stands for action. You call them to action and send them somewhere else. It could be as simple as just going to your comment section and leaving a response to a question you may have proposed to them and starting a conversation. Or it may be to your website link in your bio, or other platforms with you to connect on. Essentially, you don't want them just scrolling on to the next post as soon as they've consumed your piece of content. You want to retain that attention and make sure that you are funneling it further down that sales funnel, so that you can leverage that audience, so that you can potentially have this person as a client, or just build a relationship with them so that further down the line, they may become that client. So attention, interest, desire, action. Slide number 1, attention. Slides 2 to 6, interest, slides 7 to 9, desire, final slide, you're calling them to action. AIDA. That's the AIDA formula, and that's structure number 1. Structure number 2, and this is one where you may just be providing a list of different things. So books to read, podcasts to consume, blogs to take note of, or a list of any sort. Something that could potentially help the viewer to better their time management, better their well-being, better their skills as an entrepreneur, any of these different things depending on what niche you're in. But it's pretty similar in the way that you are going to introduce all of these different structures I'm going to mention. Obviously, that first slide is always going to be your headline. It needs to grab that attention. It needs to have those appealing images or visuals that are going to grab people and make them want to read further. So your cover slide needs to be spot on. Your headline needs to grab attention instantly, and it needs to have a complementary visual to inspire people to want to read onwards. But then those first couple of slides, or however many slides you want to introduce your piece of content for, need to really build up that interest. You need to connect on an emotional level so that they get to those desire and value slides at the end and continue to consume your content. So with the list, we're going to have our cover slide, and then in the first 2 slides is where we're going to propose a problem. So for example, do you struggle with Instagram growth? And then on the next slide, you can emphasize that problem or introduce the slides that are coming up. So for example, you could say, well, do not worry, because in the next few slides, I'm going to give you a list of things you need to do to improve that. And then you go on to provide that list on the rest of the slides. Final slide, again, action. You've had that attention. You've retained that attention. They are fully consumed with you, and therefore you want to drive that attention further down your funnel. So for the list, we're opening up with the cover. We're introducing the list by grabbing people's attention with a problem on the first couple of slides, and then we're giving them the value for the rest of the slides that we have available. And then, like with every structure I'm going to mention, we call them to action. But something different you could actually do with the list, rather than just having that list go from the 4th slide all the way through to the 9th, on the 9th slide, you could possibly have a recap slide. So you mention all of the different points you made between slides 4 and slides 8, just as a recap on that final slide, so that people can sort of have a summary of everything you've mentioned, because they may not be able to remember all of the different points you made throughout, and they may be grateful for a small summary, and they may consequently then go and hit that save button because they want to refer back to that summary in the future. So summaries, I've mentioned it in the podcast before, are a great way of increasing saves. So that was a list, and then moving on to the third structure we're going to have more of a story, an experience you may have had that you solved, and then you're going to provide a solution at the end. So obviously, first slide, we're going to have our cover. Then slides 2 and 3, again, it's going to be pretty similar. We're going to introduce the problem, connect on that emotional level, get people hooked straight away so that they're invested in the story that you're about to tell, and consequently want to consume it all so that they receive the value. And then it's as simple as just telling your story, but telling it in a way that is easily consumable and keeps people gripped throughout. You don't want to just go in at the beginning of the story and provide the value. You want to present the problem, tell them what happened, and because you're presenting a problem, people are going to connect with that because they might be having that problem themselves. And when people have a problem themselves that they may be currently going through, or they think that they're going to go through in a few weeks or a few months down the line, they're going to want to consume your content because they want to be ready for that problem, or they want to overcome that problem right now. So by connecting on an emotional level with a problem, you're grabbing people, keeping them hooked because they want to find out how to solve it. So telling a story in a way that people will connect with it on that emotional level is key, because it keeps them hooked and keeps them scrolling through that carousel, which is keeping people on the platform, which is highlighting to the algorithm that your piece of content performs well, and that Instagram can then show more ads, and then they can make more money. All of the different things we know about the Instagram algorithm, that can be indicated through someone scrolling through and consuming your whole carousel. So you want people to consume all of it. To do so, you need to tell a story. You need to keep people hooked, get them inspired, get them scrolling through, and then provide them with the value, call them to action, send them elsewhere. Same structure applies to all carousels. It's just more of a case with this episode. I'm telling you how to structure specific types of carousels so that they perform well. And something else that performs very well in a carousel is a step-by-step process. A step-by-step process could be put into an infographic, but if you want to see the best performance, it's probably better to break it down into a carousel and make it easier to read for someone. This is the thing with a carousel. You need to be thinking about it from this perspective. Would it be easier to read and consume this content if it's put in a carousel opposed to something else? It's your duty as a creator to ensure that the way you are presenting your content is the easiest way to be consumed by your audience. If it's not, then you don't want to post that piece of content in that format. When I create my content ideas, I make sure that I put next to it what I think is going to be the best way for that piece of content to perform. So in my content calendar, I've got my 30 ideas for the following month, and next to them, I've got whether they'll perform best as a reel, a carousel, a single image, a video less than 60 seconds, or an IGTV. That way, I know when I come to create it, I'm not thinking about, I'm just going to put that in a carousel. I know how I need to create it because I know it's going to best perform in that way. So a step-by-step guide, in my opinion, would probably perform best in a carousel because you're showing each step, keeping people hooked and getting them to scroll through. So again, slide number 1, we've got our cover. Slide number 2 and 3, we introduced that problem. We had a problem and we overcame it with this step-by-step process that we're just about to tell people. So we introduce the problem, we emphasize why it was a problem in the next slide, and then with the remaining slides, we have the step-by-step process. And like with the list, on the final slide, slide 9, before your call to action, we could have a recap again, just so that people aren't having to consume the whole piece of content in the future if they want to refer back to it. So, slide number 1, cover. Slide number 2 and 3, introduce and emphasize the problem. Slides 4 to 8, we provide our step-by-step solution. And then slide 9, we have our recap. Slide 10, our call to action. Now, I know I repeated myself a lot, but it's because you need to understand that the structure throughout is pretty similar. You grab the attention, you then connect on that emotional level with your interest slides, and then you just provide the value to keep people hooked towards the end. And because you've then provided them with the value, you call them to action. You send them further down your funnel. But it's just down to you how you present this across your carousel, depending on what type of content you are producing. So it could be a step-by-step guide, it could be a list, it could be a story, it could be a process, or it could just be something that simply follows the AIDA formula. Think about the way you are structuring it. How can you best use each slide? How are you going to retain the attention? How are you going to call people to action? These are all things you need to consider. Don't just create a carousel and put random things in each slide for the sake of it being a carousel. Tell a story, keep people engaged, send them further down your funnel. Simple as that. And that rounds up this episode on how to structure your Instagram carousels. And that wraps up today's video. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and turn on post notifications. That way you will never miss a video when I post one. But I did just want to mention, if you did enjoy this video, it's actually a part of my podcast series, Social Media Marketing School. And the audio version of the podcast is actually the place to be because I release these episodes a little bit earlier on the audio version of the podcast, and then a little bit later I will release them here on YouTube. So if you want to consume this content a little bit sooner, make sure you are subscribing to the audio version of the podcast. I'll leave some links in the description, so just scroll down, head over there and subscribe to the audio version of the podcast. But if you've got any questions with regards to anything I've mentioned in today's video, please just reach out to me on Instagram @themarketingethan, send me a DM, and I'll make sure I get back to you no matter what. But if you did make it to this point in today's video, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.